Hi guys, gnembon here and welcome to 27th episode of Fun Farms. Today we are going to continue with the 1.14 villager stuff where we explain the point of interest system and how not to get frustrated and use it effectively for trading. Then how to create an infinite villager breeder to get villagers to trade, but also for other tasks like iron spawning or to build a hero of the village farms, etc. And you would need quite a bunch of them these days, especially if you want to do any trading, because you cannot just trade infinitely with just one guy at a time. So what's up with the villages? I heard that there are no longer separate village structures in the game, but how I see it, it looks rather like there is instead a huge global village, one for each dimension. And that village is controlled by both villagers themselves and the dimension-wide point of interest system. So what is a point of interest system? It's a way of storing and maintaining the types of non-active but functional blocks in the game that affects the gameplay. Why it's needed? Because without it the villagers will be very laggy. We have a similar thing to it already with the nether portal system that keeps track of links from one dimension to another. However, because still to this day portals don't track when they are broken or created, this system of connected portals is very short-lived. Each connection lasts no more than 20 seconds, and when a link expires, the game needs to search several million blocks looking for potential portal blocks to link to the other side. And that creates a massive lag. With the points of interest system, we can track specialized blocks forever, monitoring when they are created, deleted, and providing fast access to them. So a villager looking for a cauldron doesn't need to scan thousands of blocks around them, just consult the POI system. Villagers care primarily about three types of blocks. First is workstations, or we can call them whistles, that give them the ability to trade and have professions, which apart from the farmers means pretty much nothing. It's kinda a huge missed opportunity here. Second are beds, which give them home, and there are also bells, which give them, a common space to hang around, I guess. And what makes the system rather interesting is the fact that the villagers acquire point of interest and lose them in a very different way. To be able to acquire a point of interest, that particular point of interest must not be used in the POI system by other villagers, but other villagers can still use it even if it's not in the POI system. Already confusing. To acquire a point of interest, villager cannot be stuck, and by not stuck I don't mean that he cannot move, but that he cannot pathfind. Explanation of the differences will come in a minute. If villager have been traded with but lost his workstation and realized about it, he can still acquire a workstation for his profession. And that the point of interest is within a 48 block sphere around the villager. What is also important is that the villager can acquire any point of interest at any point of the day. On the other hand, a villager can lose a point of interest, first when he dies, which might not be very useful because we need villagers, but that not only releases the point of interest from its memory, but also from the point of interest system, so other villagers can start using it. The other option is when it's too far from it, and this time around it's 150 blocks Manhattan distance for beds and 100 blocks Manhattan distance for bells and whistles. So this time around it's like a huge diamond around him. And the last way for them to lose a point of interest is when they are actually really close, so 3 blocks away from it, and they realize that that point of interest doesn't exist anymore. And one more thing which is quite important and different from the acquiring of the point of interest. He'll only forget those if he's actively involved in a task that uses them. So for example, work is between time 2000 and 9000, socializing between 9 and 11,000, and sleep is during the night. So they can only lose their beds, for example, at night, and lose their workstations during work hours. There's one more thing to the villager's brain, that is, they act independently from the point of interest system. When a particular point of interest is broken, it is only removed from the POI system, but not from the villager brain it belongs to. Because, as I said, he needs to be at the spot exactly and at the proper time to actually lose it. This makes so if we are, for example, in a village where there is very few workstations, and we, for example, want to quickly convert all the unemployed villagers to farmers, we don't need to place multiple composters, but we can just break and replace the only one that they have. Every time you do it, the new free-to-take entry is created in the POI system, and all of these villagers will eventually take it. So if we leave the last composter, it's all good as well. All of those villagers will now work around the same spot and we'll be able to restock from it. It's a cool technique to convert quickly all available villagers in a random village to the profession we need. But with trading halls we need more control for each villager independently, so we won't be skimping on workstations just for that reason. But this approach can be used with success to convert multiple villagers in bulk into a hero of the village farm, for example. So this is the contraption we can use. So you have all the villagers over here, so if I keep placing, let's say, the stonecutter, you can see they all get converted to masons. And then when you just want to convert them back to something else, you just need to flick this lever. And when they go back and realize that they are away from the workstation, they'll convert back to the unemployed. But it has to be within the working hours from 2k to 9k time. So what does it mean that the villager can't pathfind and is not properly stuck? As we know, mobs pathfinding is not all about the destination, it's about the journey. So in this situation, our testificate still has hopes to hop on one of these positions in the corners. One day, he's undoubtedly stuck, but just a little. Things like carpets, trapdoors, doors that block movement are considered fully passable for pathfinding. So this guy, for example, definitely thinks about himself as a free person, he just can't move. These two guys, on the other hand, consider themselves properly stuck. They don't even have hopes to get through to any of the 8 initial positions around them, and their pathfinding simply fails. How does this manifest itself? For example, if I place a bunch of workstations, these, since they have hope, will take those, and these that are hopeless, they won't take the job. And we'll be using this behavior for both the villager breeder and in the training hall. So that's pretty much it, all the important bits. At this point we have all the information necessary to know how and why this breeder works, and the rest is just execution. The shell where the villagers stay look very similar to my previous 1.13 breeder or Minerva's villager breeder. This time around they have glass blocks pushed right into their bodies but not their heads. It seems like they need to peek above the blocks to see the piers to be able to breathe at the first place, so to prevent water getting them out of the cells we need these signs here. The block inside their bodies will be blocking their pathfinding, which is interesting because this means that they wouldn't be able to assign beds for themselves, but they will be able to assign beds for the babies. As a side effect, this would mean that the elders won't be able to share their food with the babies, which is always a plus. If any of the villagers here has an assigned bed, it's not a big deal. You can just replace their beds later to create new points of interest entries for the new babies. The important thing here is the fact that we will be resetting baby villagers' beds automatically. You might actually choose to assign them some fake beds before the breeder is on and before you put these blocks inside them, just to ensure they won't be stealing any beds from the babies in the future, but that step is not necessary. Around we have a standard water channels that align the items to the half of the block, which in case we have more villagers on the other side of the water channel, can pick up the food regardless how villagers are positioned within those cells. And the same as in previous designs, due to how greedy villagers are, when you are sending them food through the water channels, we need about 8 stacks of food to deliver to each one of them to make sure that the last villager gets access to food as well. And that would give them plenty of resources for breeding for the foreseeable future. In the third chunk from the breeder, we have a little space for the babies' beds that will be in the range of the breeding pairs, but outside of the range of the output collection area. After babies are born, we need to move them 150 blocks away from their beds, which we do this with this 110 block high tower, and with this extra 40 block space between the elevator and the bed area, that would make the babies drop their beds and release them to the other babies. The thing is, villagers breed during the day, but they sleep at night, and to lose their beds they need to actively need them. This is why we have this latch over here that will open only at full night, so the babies from the day should be able to release their beds while they are waiting up there and drop only when it's deep in the night and they can realize that they are away from their beds. Due to the timings and the breeding delays, each villager pair will have a chance to have exactly 2 babies per day, which means that we will be needing exactly as many beds as there are villagers in the breeding area. In 1.13 and before, there has been some randomness the way villagers were breeding, but it seems like this got removed, so villagers tend to drop all their babies almost at once. And they will be waiting their 5 minutes together until the new breeding period happens. A player sleeping quickly through the night could technically speed up the breeding process, but we still need to wait for the babies to lose their beds at night and release them for the new villagers. To start the breeder we can do it in 2 ways. If we have all the villagers for all the cells already, either collected from the village or from some other manual breeder. A manual breeder is very easy, just place a bunch of beds and give them food and they will multiply. Or we can start with a pair. In the first case, just fill all cells with pairs of villagers, One thing though, you don't need to keep the villagers in individual cells anymore. Previously there was a random component where villagers could get stuck on each other trying to breed with villagers on cooldown. In 1.14 this has been removed, so villagers stuck in one hole will always find a partner to breed, and also their differences in breeding delays get reset pretty much every night, so cramming villagers in one hole is not a problem anymore. But it is still a problem lag-wise. If we go with the breeding from a single pair, we just need to make sure that the current villagers have a bed available for the babies we want to get out of the current number of parents. And then when the babies are grown, we just need to remove the beds, put them back into the breeder, replace their beds so they can have the new location for their beds, and rinse and repeat until the breeder is full. Then we just need to place all the final babies' beds, and assuming all the parents have glass in their bodies, so locked pathfinding, the breeder should be operating at full capacity. In a rare occasion when the lightning strikes, villagers can turn into witches, so we might want to invest in some sort of roofing above just to protect them from this occasion. This is something that didn't change from a previous design. Up top we have a 3-block high space. It's not fully needed for the babies, but if we start skipping the nights with babies growing up here, it'll be possible with 2 high space for villagers to get stuck on a roofing block and block all the other new babies. And here we have a very fancy redstone that makes sure that new villagers are not released until it's night, because if they drop during the day, that would mean that they will be blocking their beds, and that's what we don't want. Now, there are probably safer methods to bring them down, but since it's a breeder that breeds babies to the maximum capacity of their parents, it might be good to provide some means of natural selection. In all seriousness, once the gates of the nights are open, it is safe to bring the babies down, providing we don't encroach to the bed zone. It is also important that the 48-block sphere around the beds should only contain the breeding villagers, because any homeless villager will acquire any of these, and unlike for professions, there is no way to tell in-game which one is which. So let's now talk about the trading halls, as with 1.14 you might need more than one of them. Previously you really needed plenty librarians to get all the books and smith to get some of the diamond gear. Apart from that, 1 or 2 farmers would be more than what you would need to get all the emeralds to buy all the books with. These days, due to the fact that villagers restock twice a day, you need quite a bit of them to trade, presumably next to some farms that produce such goods. Also, because their trades got much more complex, it is beneficial to trade with multiple types of villagers at multiple different locations. And for that we'll be needing a lot of them. I never understood the appeal of fully automated trading halls, mainly due to the fact that with simple user error you could accidentally burn your best mending villager. The most advanced technical servers and technical players store their villagers manually, away from any redstone magic, just for safety. However, currently there is a little bit of a challenge. Villager, in order to restock their trades, needs to be at his workstation pretty much all the time. If we lock him in and the workstation is further away, he simply won't be able to refresh his trades. And pairing a villager to a workstation, it's not something that can be easily visible in survival. The problem is that if we bring all the villagers first and start placing workstations in front of them, it is not guaranteed that it will rarely happen that the workstation in front of them is the one that they would restock from. And that's crucial. The thing is, a villager will always choose the closest workstation to him, but if you want more than one villager, even if you place a block in front of him, chances are some other dude would beat them to it and get his workstation. So after placing all the workstations, it would seem like it's all fine, but the fact is their workstations are all mixed up, so they won't be able to reset their trades, and those that are too far from their workstation will never refresh and will be pretty much useless. The only thing you can do at this point is to let them roam free during their work hours and let them discover that their workstation is gone. With these kinds of setups, you need to bring one villager at a time, place a workstation, make sure that is connected, bring another, place again, etc., which might be pretty annoying. So what we really want is a situation where we can bring all the villagers at once and then give them professions in a way that they all have access to their own workstation. So I've been experimenting with this concept over here, creating some sort of a villager stalls where we can cram a number of villagers to trade and just give them one workstation to share. So for that we just need to wait for the time they don't work, bring a few of them to the pod and then move the workstation back and forth with the piston until all of them convert to farmers in this case. And then during the day we could just trade with all of them, allowing them to restock at their shared workstation in the middle. And that would work, but only with one pod, and that's not a viable solution. The thing is, the distance to the workstation doesn't seem to be working very well when pathfinding struggles. And when the villagers are at the workstations, that's one of the situations where we want to give pathfinding a little bit more time. The thing is, if a villager sits right next to the workstation, the pathfinding succeeds most of the times with a path of length 0, and these also count for some reason as failed pathfinding or no path. To show this in extreme, let's look at this situation. We have a bunch of villagers right next to the workstations. We could hope that these should become masons and these farmers. But we already see that there's a problem. We got, for example, a farmer here. So let's reshuffle their workstations. And as you can see, pathing to the other workstation was more successful, as there's no obvious path or length that's more than 0 to the workstation that they're at. This still can work, just going around and trying to connect via some other path, but primarily it will be failing on the blocks next to them. So decent idea, but due to some quirks with pathfinding, unreliable and confusing. But this gives an idea for a way of creating a trading hall without the need of bringing villagers from very far, carefully one at a time. If we bring villagers to a grid of blocks like this one, just because they are surrounded by blocks all around them, this locks their pathfinding and they won't be able to recognize any workstations that we place. And that's good. Unfortunately, this solution would never be one-wide tileable, but at least is decently compact and a foolproof solution. Because one-wide tileable solutions that prevent villagers from pathing just don't exist. But with that, what we can do is to place one workstation at a time and enable pathfinding for each villager at a time. Now, this particular method is somewhat slow, and the reason seems to be the same of what we have seen in the trading stall example. Villagers just don't pathfind very well to a spot that's right next to them. But it can be done this way, and as a result we can have an entire trading hall filled with villagers we want with their own workstations right in front of them. At this point, if we don't like their first trades, we can reroll their trades before they log out on the first transaction. Since all the villagers are assigned to the workstations they stay next to, there is no risk of messing stuff up if you only change one villager at a time. And for those who think it's a hack, because lots of you guys were thinking it's a hack, there's a deliberate task for that in the code that checks whether they traded before and forgets their profession. And it works the same on the Bedrock edition, with the exception that they require a bed with that to work as well. So that's it. I like the particle effect, I must say. It's really nice. However, it turns out that there's a faster way to give them professions, and that's by blocking them in a slightly different way. For that, we need to run a stripe of blocks above their heads like so, and place a workstation and unblock 2 blocks that block their way out. Likely due to the different pathfinding results, they tend to get their workstation much quicker this way. And at the end we just need to place a bunch of trapdoors or even slabs to block them fully from baby zombies or chicken jockeys. And that's it. So that would be the design of the trading hall. I added a platform where we can collect batches of unemployed villagers and drop them directly to each cell, but before we do that we must remember to block all their pathfinding spaces around them with some temporary blocks. I added a little bit of redstone here so each villager sits on a pressure plate that locks access to that cell, so when we really don't like a particular trader we can simply kill it and next time another villager will be able to drop in that spot. We need to wrangle the villagers to each hole by ourselves, but the platform up top is actually leak-proof, so with more stubborn villagers we can just use a water bucket to move them around. Once we added a batch of new villagers to the new spots, we just need to walk from one villager to another, place a workstation and remove 2 of their obstructions, so they can have a zigzag path of size 1 to the workstation, and after we are done with the batch, we can inspect their trades. Whenever we bring a new batch of villagers, there cannot be even a single workstation available, otherwise all the future configurations will be botched and villagers won't be able to refresh their trades and change professions. To reroll the trade, replace the workstation, enable pathfinding, and rinse and repeat until you are satisfied. At the end, you can just close the facade. They will be able to restock even if their pathfinding is blocked if they sit right next to the workstation. To remove villagers from the trading hall, don't forget to remove both the villagers and their workstations. And if you already have some dudes waiting up top to be added, make sure to remove the workstation first and then kill the villager, otherwise some of the dudes upstairs will take it. And if it's more than one, you'll have hard time figuring out whose is which. Try not to remove their workstations. If you do it by accident or a creeper blows up and still keeping them alive for some reason, it's not the end of the world. You just need to be very careful, making sure that you first block pathfinding for all the villagers involved and then initialize them one by one. In case you have already traded with a villager and this happens, you won't lose their trades, but on the downside you won't be able to tell easily that he recognized his new workstation that you placed in front of him. When he's already established in his profession, regaining workstations take much more time because they need to find a new one via other means than just the task that's responsible for finding their jobs for novices. If it's not a crucial villager, it's better, it's faster to kill them, but if it's a valuable villager, it's not the end of the day. Trade with him until he locks his trade and then just wait until he restocks. If that happens, this means that he has found again his workstation we placed for him, but this might take quite some time. In case we messed it up and let the villager take a workstation and we don't know which one of it is, we can simply let them go and wait for a proper time for them to work and destroy their workstation he wanders towards to get him reset or put him in that particular cell. Although you shouldn't have any free cells that have workstations in them in the first place. So that would be it, guys, for today. A thorough explanation of the point of interest system and 2 applications for it. How to build an infinite homeless and unemployed villager breeder and how to assemble a villager trading hall. The point of interest system is very delicate and very easy to mess up. The use of any of these blocks around villagers may change their behaviors and confuse the players. Placing random beds to skip the day, or the use of certain blocks like cauldrons or composters, which are common redstone components, or even using new furnaces may mess up the delicate structure of your breeder or a trading hall. I wish villagers would show their particles like they do on Bedrock Edition every time you change their profession or any point of interest, so that looking up their NBT is not the only way to tell what's going on. So if you enjoyed the video, learned something interesting, don't forget to leave me a like, subscribe if you are new, and if you have something to add, leave me a comment in the comment section below, and see you in the next one. Bye bye!